Okay, I think you have to click over there on the screen to take off the notice. Good morning. Today is the yahrzeit of the Meshech Chochmah. We have such good Torah for the Meshech Chochmah. I wanted to speak out something from them on this week's parsha, but I didn't have a chance to look anything up. But it's good for Yogan Aleinu. Okay, so we are up to right on the top of Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph. We were discussing Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was the one who said that when someone gives Tosh Tshuva, his intent, the umdana is that his intent is only to give it if it's going to lead to an asuin. So if he dies or if he divorces her while she's in a rutzah, then she's not entitled to the Tosh Tshuva. And we said that either Rav Nosson or Rav hold like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, but not both of them. The Gemara said both Rav Nosson and Rav hold that you do follow an umdana. When the Chazal make an assessment that this is what someone was thinking, even if they didn't actually articulate it, we put that into the transaction. So in this case, the transaction is being mechayiv himself Toshus Ksuba, but the machlokes between Rav and Rav Nosson is what do we assess him as thinking. So one of them holds like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that the assessment is that he only wants to give it after the Nisuin. The person who argues on Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah will hold that the assessment is that even after the Erishin, he feels that kurva, he feels that closeness, and he wants to give the Tshuva. We are 4 lines from the top of Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph. Yosef Rav Chanina and Major Rabbi Yanai. Rav Chanina was sitting in front of Rabbi Yanai. Because Amar, and he said, Halacha Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Halacha Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, in fact, that the extra in the Ksuba only apply once there's an Isur. Amar Lei, Rabbi Yanai told him, Hoik Kri Karach Lebra. Take your Torah and take it outside, because it's simply not true. Ein Halacha Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The halacha is not like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The Arishonim will learn that Rabbi Chanina was a Balkaira. So Rabbi Yanai told him, Poik Kari Kara, you go lane, you stick to laning, stay away from halacha lamaita. You just be a Balkaira, because your information is not correct. You do not pattern like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Amr Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdima Mishum Rabbeinu. Who is Rabbeinu? That's also Shiloh. But Rashi says it's referring to Rav. Tosfos says it must be referring to Rebbe. And he said as follows: Halacha ka Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Halacha is like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel, Halacha ka Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rav Nachman didei Amar, but Rav Nachman said in his own name that I disagree with Shmuel, and it's ein Halacha ka Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Then the Hardohi Mishmei Rav Nachman, in the Hardohi in the name of Rav Nachman, they said. Halacha Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The apple gave the lot Rav Nachman, even though Rav Nachman actually gave a kolola. The Amar, and he said, "Kol daina dedayin to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Whoever passes like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, hachi v'hachi tahava. He should have to suffer X and Y. It's not clear what exactly he said that person should suffer, but it wasn't something that people would line up to get. Afilu hachi halacha Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Halacha like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Halacha l'maisa, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Halacha l'maisa of the Gemara is with Paskin like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. In fact, that before the Nisuin, the extras in the Ksuba are not payable to her. I don't remember having such a Gemara with such controversy at the who to Paskin like. But
sorry, are these all like in the same era, or they're different times?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what all the people are, but
it would be surprising if they were all at the same time. But who is it? Nachman makes such a strong.
There's even Shitas who learned that there were 2 Rav Nachmans, because in Rav Nachman itself we have contradictory opinions. Okay, so let's see the Gemara weiter. Boy Ravin had a child. What would happen if she was nichnas al chuppah, v'loy nevala? She was, when she went into the chuppah, but a bia didn't happen, and we'll see why a bia didn't happen, and then he died right away. So the question is, since there was chuppah already, what would Rabbi Elazar desire hold? Would the full tshuva be payable? Now, is it chibas chuppah kind? Is it that closeness of the chuppah that creates his want to give her the extra ksuba and then she gets it? Or chibas bia kind? Or is it actually the bia? So until there's an actual bia, there wouldn't be the chiyuv of these extra items in the ksuba. Pashma, let's see if we can verify that. The Tani Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef said the reason why if he dies or he gets her during the erison, the extra of the ksuba is not relevant, he's not mechuyev, is shalakasav ella al chibas laila harishain. He only wrote it to her, he only gave her the extra because of the chiba of the first night. So let's think, which of these two items are relevant the first night? If you're going to say it's the chuppah that triggers his want to give her these extras, I knew the Omar Laila Harisha. Laila Harisha makes sense because the chuppah occurs once and it occurs the first night. But if it's about the bia Belaila Harisha Isa Bikan Velach Lasa, bia is something that goes on throughout the entire marriage. So it wouldn't be because of the Laila Harisha. The Laila Harisha means an event that occurs only on the Laila Harisha. So it must mean chuppah. Correct? The Elamai chuppah. You're saying that the kibbutz chuppah that creates his want to give her this extra. Chuppah b'layla ita b'vam lasa. What do you mean b'layla harisha? Chuppah could happen by day as well. You don't have to only do chuppah at night. Correct? So what do you want to say? It means bia. Bia b'layla isa b'vam lasa. Are you telling me there's no bia by day, by night, by day? Are you saying that there's no bia by day? Even though we don't do bia by day, but there's two reasons for that. Either because it's not theistic, or it's because by day one could see things that maybe won't be as attractive as when he can't see things. And therefore, you do it by night. But we know there's a rule, bevet's awful, if it's a dark room, so then it's going to be mutter. So once again, Rabbi Yosef's expression of Shalakatavla Ela Al Chibas Laila Rishon doesn't seem to fit in perfectly referring to chuppah, but it doesn't seem to fit in perfectly either referring to bia. So halakasa, what are you going to have to say? That bia normally is at night. The bia belayla. Bia is supposed to be at night normally. Ela chuppah kosher. Chuppah is schwer because surely you can make a chuppah by day. It's not schwer chuppah either. Why Rabbi Yosef would refer to the chuppah as Laila Harishon? You know why? Even the stam chuppah labia kaimer. Since normally, what does chuppah do? It's taking her in, leading to the next step, which is bia. Therefore, oyach ayar kamash malon the belayla. The norm is to do a chuppah at night. And since the norm is to do a chuppah at night, it makes sense that Rabbi Yosef was referring to chuppah when he said shaloi kasav la el al chibas laila harishon. So it seems that once there's a chuppah, we're going to say that the extras in the ksuba were triggered, and if he dies after the chuppah before the bia, there will still be a payment to her of all the extras. Boy Ravashi is an interesting child. What happens if nichnas al chuppah u pirsanida? She went into the chuppah, but then she was pirsanida, so it couldn't have led to a bia. Now, if you hold that it's chibas chuppah koina, maybe it only means chuppah dechaz bia. What type of chuppah do we say is the type of chuppah that will induce him to want to give her the extras in the ksuba? If it's a chuppah that will lead to a bia, al chuppah dechaz bia, but a chuppah that couldn't lead to bia because she's a nida loy, then it wouldn't be mechayim. Or maybe it doesn't matter, and either way he's mechayim himself, and the Gemara should take it. But we need to understand how did this happen that she was pierced nida? Let's think about it. If she was only pierced nida afterwards. So at the time of the chuppah, it was a perfect chuppah roy labia. So he was machayiv himself. If later on she was pierced with needle, why should that impact anything? The chuppah was a regular chuppah that was going to head towards bia. And if you're going to learn that she became a nida before the chuppah, well, then you have a problem. The Rambam definitely would have a problem because the Rambam holds that a chuppah's nida isn't even a good chuppah. So there's a couple of different approaches in the Rishonim. The Mordechai learns that, of course, she became a nida after. So if that's the case, our original question is, why isn't it a regular chuppah that would trigger the chiyuv? The Teretz is because it was on the day of the vest. They scheduled the chuppah, or it's worked out that the chuppah was on the day of the vest. So even though she was not yet a nida, but she knew that she was going to become also that day. So therefore, even though she only became a nida after the chuppah, the question is since at the actual time of the chuppah she was not a nida, maybe he still gives her the extra to the ksuba or not. That's how the Mordechai learned. The Rosh learned. The Rosh learned that the Rosh learns that Avada she was a nida before. She was a nida before, but he didn't know about it. And since he didn't know about it, he still had the Kibbutz Bia. And then after the chuppah, she said, "You can't touch me." But therefore, that's how the Rosh learned why there would possibly be a chiyuv to pay the Kuba. Okay, let's see the Helig Gemara back here. Oh, I'm sorry, Rabbi Kiva Eger has a very interesting child. What happens if the night of the chuppah is Leil Tvila? So after the chuppah herself, she knows there'll be Via tonight. He knows there'll be Via tonight, but she didn't go to the mikveh yet. So would there be? Is that considered a chibas chuppah that he would be koina, or lamaisa? Since right now at the chuppah she is a nida, therefore it wouldn't be koina. So it's actually a little bit of a disagreement between Rabbi Kiveger and his father-in-law and his son-in-law, the Chassam Sofer. Rabbi Kiveger held that this would not be a chuppah that would be mechayiv the ksuba because right now she's a nida, while the Chassam Sofer held that could be this would be mechayiv him with a full ksuba. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Roitza Koshev L'Basulos. Rabbi Yehuda, leading on to the second half of the Mishnah. So if you remember, there were two main controversies in the Mishnah. The first was Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah and the Tanakama as to whether or not he's mechayiv himself the extras in the ksuba at the kedushin or at the nesuin. And the second machlokes in the Mishnah was between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir said that if a woman gives up her ksuba, it's called bilas nut. There has to be a full ksuba there. But Rabbi Yehuda said that a woman has a right to be moichel the ksuba, and the way it would be expressed would be is that she would write that I accepted part of the ksuba. So the ksuba would say, for Basula, I'm being mechayiv itself Messiah, and she would write a receipt back that I have already received a mana, and that will work, and they could stay married. But what is the method that Rabbi Yehuda said we should use to reduce the amount of the ksuba? It's her writing on the affidavit that she accepted 50% of the payment. She didn't just say I'm moichel you. So correct the Gemara. The Sover Rabbi Yehuda, the Kois and Shover, does Rabbi Yehuda hold that you need to write receipts? Now the shaila of writing receipts is as follows. Reuben borrows $100,000 from Shimon. So there's a star that's given to Shimon that Shimon has to hold on to. If Shimon loses that star, Shimon's sort of going to forfeit his return payment. He needs to hold on to that star in order to be able to collect back from Reuben. Now Reuben paid back $50,000 of that money. So what happened? Do you just write a receipt from Shimon to Reuben? So now, if Shimon ever pulls out a star that says, Reuben, you owe me 100,000, Reuben could pull out a star that says, Shimon says, I accepted from you repayment so far 50. But that means that Reuben the loiva has to always hold on to this star. And if he loses it or if it gets ruined, he could be out $50,000. Therefore, there are those who hold that we don't put that responsibility on the loiva. Rather, we put the responsibility on the malva that we have to change the star, we have to modify the star, and now the Malva still holds on to his star. So the question is upon who do we place the responsibility of watching and guarding this star? So Dr. Gemara, the suburb who did the Kaiskin Shiver, is to hold you write a receipt, meaning the onus is on the loiva. In this case, it's the husband to hold on to the star. But non, Misha part makes us chayva, someone paid up part of his chayv. What you do is you tear up his original star and you write up a new star with the reduced amount. And now the Malva has to hold on to that. The Malva suffers by doing this because his original star made the loiv nechasim mishubadim on the date of the original star. Now that you have to write up a new star, it's going to reset the date of the nechasim mishubadim to the date of the new star. So it's to the Malva's disadvantage. A, for two reasons. A, because now his shivut starts later, and B is now he's responsible to hold on to the star. No, you write a receipt. The Malva keeps his original star, and he writes out a receipt to the loiva, and the loiva is responsible to hold on to it. So let's think about it. If you hold like Rabbi Yehuda, that it's Yachlit, so why does Rabbi Yehuda hold in our case that he has to hold on to the shoiver that she writes him, and if he loses it, she can collect the full amount of the ksuba? Why don't we just modify the ksuba? That's what the Yehuda sheet is. Zakta Gemara, Amar Yirmiyah, we don't write out a new receipt, and then that would cause harm to the loiva. Rather, we just write on the ksuba itself. We take the ksuba itself out, and we write a note that this has been partially paid. So therefore, you're not putting any extra pressure on the loiva or on the husband, because he has to hold on to the ksuba anyway. Now the ksuba has some extra text on it, and it doesn't change the date of the chiba. Abaya Amar, afilu tema mishe'ein shevrasa mitaycha. Even if you're writing out a separate document, and now he has to hold on to this separate document, it would still apply for ksuba. Why? Because I understand why you don't put the responsibility on the loiva to hold on to an extra document. Bishlam Hasam, Vade Pare. We have a case where a loiva paid up. He originally borrowed 50,000. We know he paid back. He originally borrowed 100,000. We know he paid back 50,000. And now the question is how we record it. So we say that we don't make the loiva hold on to a receipt because Dilma Mirchas, Tavarta, maybe he'll lose that receipt. And then the Malva will pull out the original star, which has no indication that it was partially paid. And then the Malva might collect the loan in full, even though it was already partially paid. But Hacha, in the case of Ksuba, no one paid anything. Hacha, Vade, Yoivla, Vadi Yoivla. You told me that he gave her something? He didn't pay a penny. Milta Ba'alma Hida Amrle. She was just gifting him back some of his responsibility. So they were not recording a payment. He never gave her any part of the ksuba. She's writing it because she's expressing that she's being moichelet. So if that's the case, then we're not going to be so concerned about protecting him like we would a loiva. He had a great gift from her. If he holds on to it and is careful with it, so then he'll benefit of this great gift. And it's too bad for him. By a loiva, sure, we want to protect the loiva. He paid back. We don't want him to pay another time. But this guy got lucky. His wife was kind enough to be Michael. He can hold on. He can hold on to his star. And if he doesn't, it's too bad for him. So therefore, even Rav Yehuda, who normally holds, you don't write a shaver when it comes to giving back a ksuba, you do write a shaver. Dr. Gemara, Bishlama Abaye. We understand why Abaye, Le'omer Rabbi Yirmiyah, didn't want to say like Rabbi Yirmiyah, who said that the case of our Mishnah is where in the Suba itself you added an extra line of text. You know why Abaye doesn't like that shot? Because it doesn't say that. It says you write out a shaver, which is mashma in our Mishnah, that it's a separate document. So he didn't want to learn shot like Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah, my time Abaye. Why didn't Rabbi Yirmiyah look like Abaye's shot? Why did Rabbi Yirmiyah say, change the simplest shot in the Mishnah, that's a separate receipt, and says that it's written into the ksuba? He had a way out. He could have learned like Abaye, that even though normally you don't write a shover, it's a very logical argument that Abaye made, that for ksuba, in this case, you would write out a shover. Dr. Gemara, you know Rabbi Yirmiyah doesn't like that shot? Gzeira, shover dehacha, also shover de alma. If we write out for ksuba, we write out this receipt, people are going to think that you could write out the receipts for regular loans as well. So therefore, Rabbi Yirmiyah felt that across the board, you never write receipts at all. And therefore, he was forced to learn that in our Mishnah, the case is where you wrote the receipt into the ksuba itself. Dr. Merkaima, the cost of a lay. So one thing is clear, is the method that Rabbi Yehuda is using in our Mishnah is a written method. She had to write him a star that she accepted already 50% of the payment. Aval peloi. Why don't you just say you don't have to pay me back half? That seems not to work, because otherwise Rabbi Yehuda's case could have been so much simpler. She said you don't have to pay me back in full. But he didn't say that. It has to be written up as a star. Why is that? Amai. Davar sheba mamadu. The chiyuv ksuba, he's promising her money. And we know elsewhere that Rabbi Yehuda holds davar sheba mammon t'nai kayim. If you make a t'nai in davar sheba mammon, so he could have made the ksuba. He could have said, "I'm marrying you, almanach, that I'm not paying you in full." So according to Rabbi Yehuda, why did he have to be mechayiv himself in full? And then she is moichel by writing back a star. Why couldn't he just make a t'nai? Why couldn't the case of a reduced ksuba be so much simpler? When he made kedushin, he says almanach that your ksuba is going to be 50% of what it's supposed to. And the Rabbi Yehuda holds that a davar sheba mammon, whenever there's a chiv Torah, but it's a chiv Torah about a financial matter, t'nai kaim. You could make a t'nai, because otherwise it's not much cost of the Torah. Normally you can't make a t'nai to change the conditions of the Torah, but here by a davar sheba mammon you could. So then why couldn't Rabbi Yehuda deal with it with a t'nai? Why did he have to deal with it with an athena and then a returning of the money through the star that she wrote him? The Tanya we learned. We know there's three primary chiyuvim that a husband has towards his wife. He has to buy her clothing, which is ksus, but we had the Gemara that it might be share or it might be no. He has to give her food. He has to be the partner. He has to give her bia. 2 out of 3 are financial. Buying her clothing and feeding her are both financial. So the halacha is, if someone makes such a t'nai, the kedushin worked because he made the kedushin, but it's no bottle. His t'nai is bottle, and in fact he's married to her, and he has to give her all these 3 items because he was not machakot b'Torah, and t'nai only works if it's not machakot b'Torah. Divrei Reb Meir. That is the sheet of Reb Meir. But Rabbi Yehuda argues. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'davar sheba mammon t'nai kaim. So although he still has to give her oina, he does not have to give her share, and he doesn't have to give her ksus, because those are monetary things. So you see clearly with it, now he could have dealt with it. So why in our Mishnah did Rabbi Yehuda have to go through this complicated process of writing a shover? He could have just said in his kedushin, "You're a kedusha to me, almanach that I'm giving you less ksus."
Go. Your phone, huh? He does. He has a phone.
That's only a double.
Maybe it's orange. Is it his? Is it orange? This isn't the left. Send a message.
I think they'll clap.
What?
They'll clap. Won't see us. Chavitzi doesn't come anymore?
Or his wife to be
I think
Yes, I don't know if you can hear us.
I hear you.
We don't hear you.
We lost you about 4 minutes ago.
Can you hear me?
Now we do, but we
Now we
lost
do.
you. We lost you about 4 minutes ago. 3-4 minutes ago, we lost you.
Okay, so let's hope this will hold now. I'm on a,
Tech guy is here.
Mashiach is here now. Maybe this is the right time. No, I mean, I think the problem is at Yossi's end in Lakewood.
yeah, it's at my end. We have great reception here in Lakewood.
So yeah, we
Is it-
lost you about 4 minutes ago. We lost you.
Okay, so I don't remember what I was talking about 4 minutes ago. I know we were discussing that Yehuda told that by Darshan B'Mammon you can make it Tnai. So the question here is why can't Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah use the Tnai to reduce the Ksuba? Why did he have to reduce the Ksuba through this Shoiver? So the Gemara answered that since Ksuba is only Midrabanan, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara says that since Rabbi Yehuda holds Ksuba is Derabanan,
Every day.
so the Rabbanan want to be extra strict with Chiyuv and Rabbanan. So normally a Chiyuv Deraisa, that's the Davar Shabbat you could do away with it tonight, and you don't need to write a shaver. But since Ksuba Rabbanan, we're extra strict with it, and we say that tonight doesn't work. The Chachamim also chizik with the brave Yosy Mishal Torah, and therefore you don't do away with it, and the tonight wouldn't work, and you need to write the shaver. Right, the Gemara, are you telling me that any Chiyuv Rabbanan you cannot make a Tnai on, according to Rabbi Yehuda? Any Chiyuv Rabbanan you have to write up a star. Hare Peiros Rabbanan. The Chiyuv Peiros is the Rabbanan, and the Abdul Rabbanan Chizik, and there is no Chizik that the Rabbanan made. The Tnan, what are the Peiros that we're talking about? The Tnan we learned, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, La'olam hu oichel Peiros, Achi Yichtav Lo, Dinid Dvarim, Ein Loi B'nechsayich, Uva Perisain, Ata Olam. So the halacha is by Peiros. Normally, by Nichse Malug, if she has any properties that she brings into the marriage, he gets the Peiros. And Rashi says it's Darabanan, because the Peiros that a Baal eats on his wife's fields is at the Kana Darabanan. And there, we learned that the first Tana held that you can't just be Moichelet. I'm sorry, Rabbi Yehuda says that if he wants to do away with Peiros, if he wants to give up his right to Peiros, which is being matne, Amashakot of Torah, it's making it night to undo a right that the Rabbanon gave him. He has to write Dinid Varm Enli B'Nechsayich Ube Perisain Ube Peris Persain Adonam. But we're going to see that he doesn't really need to write this. The Kaimalon turning onto Amid Veis that even merely saying it will be effective. So you see clearly that Rabbi Yehuda allows someone to do away with a chiyuv that Chazal gave him with a mirror. So you see that even by a davar d'Rabbanan, Rabbi Yehuda holds you could be masna machakot of a Torah, which goes back to our Mishnah. Why did she have to write that she accepted partial payment? It could have just been done at night. He could have made it night. I'm only being mekadesh you. I'm an asked to pay a reduced ksuba. Amar Abaye, l'cho yesh ksuba. Everybody has ksuba. That's something that the Rabbanan were concerned about to make severe and to require writing, not to undo with it night. But not every marriage does the wife bring an asset that produce pairs. Therefore, milta the shchicha of the bar Rabbanan chizuk. Where do they come down really hard to enforce their halacha? That's by the standard ksuba, because that happens everywhere. Milta the loishchicha, for the unlikely case that a woman's going to bring in assets, which is not as common, that the kana le'obdu bar Rabbanan chizuk. Correct, Gemara, is that so? I'm going to show you otherwise. V'ha. Hare chamorim. Chamorim is a case that we're going to learn about, where it's also an Isser D'Rabbanan, it's the Isser of Demai. Nevertheless, the Shchichi, it's very common, people are always buying Paris, someone Amaris, will Abdullah Rabbanon Chiddush. And you don't find that the Rabbanon made it severe, the takana regarding Tamai. It's not relearned. Hachamorim shenichnu shel. We had this earlier in the Masechta. Chamorim are shippers. Basically, they're merchants who buy produce where it's cheap and they sell it where it's expensive. So they came into two different merchants came together and they came into the city. And each one would praise the other one's merchandise. The Amar Echad man, one of these merchants said, Shali Chadash, I have new wheat, which is not as good, it still needs to be dried out. They shall Chaver Yoshin, don't buy from me, buy from my friend, because he has better produce. So that's automatically believable because he's saying it to his detriment. He's telling you, don't buy from me, my friend here has superior product. Or Shali Einim Asukin, which is what's relevant to us. I have not yet separated Trumas and Meisters from my produce. But my friend here, he took off Trumas and Meisters. The halach is Einim. You're not believed according to the Tanakama because we're concerned that they're shilling for each other. Really, they're both lying. We made up, we'll go to this city and you'll praise my stuff. And then we'll go to the next city and you'll praise my stuff. It's like the
joke of the Yid and the Goy sitting in front of the church.
It's exactly that. It's exactly that. So therefore, you don't believe him.
He thinks that's how to make a living.
That's right. That's exactly that. Wow. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Namanim they believe. So here you have a case of Demai, the subject Demai, and you should make critical Devarim Kishal Torah to be like a subject Deraita. We should be very strict about it. Yet you see Rabbi Yehuda is more than happy to trust them. So, and this is something that's very common. Didn't we just say that Rabbi Yehuda says that by a Dover, the Rabbanon, they made a chizik to Shal Torah, even greater than Kol Shal Torah? Amar by Vadai, the Devarim of the Rabbanon chizik. If it's a Vadai, like Ksuba, there's a Vadai Chiv to do Ksuba, they are very strict about it, and they don't allow you to be masne on Masha Kotah B'Torah. That's why in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda had to have them write it out. However, Sophic the Devarim, here, what is the issue? The issue is Demai. Demai really me'ikar din. We know that the Amaratim do separate Trumas and Maishus. It's only a Sophic. So Sophic the Devarim of the Rabbanon Chizuk. Since it's only a Sophic, the Rabbanon will trust this fellow about his friend. Rav Amar b'Demai Yakilu. Rav says, forget Sophic. Demai is not even a Sophic. Because Demai, we know Roy B'Hamei are master. So since Demai is such a kuladik thing, therefore they didn't make chizik l'devrayim kishal Torah. But in our case of Ksuba, Rav Yehuda needed that she should write that she's moichel or that she received part of the payment because the t'nai would not have worked. Even though normally we hold masna mashakata b'Torah by a dover shebamayin is effective, not for Ksuba. Okay, let's go back there. Rabbi Meir Eimer, kol ha'poiches. Rabbi Meir said if someone reduces the ksuba from full price, it's bilasai bilas nus. That's what he said in our Mishnah. Dr. Gemara, it's very interesting the wording that Reb Meir used. And he used the wording of kol hapoiches. Why didn't he say something much simpler? Any woman who gets less than the full ksuba, bilasai bilas nus. Poiches is mashma that he tried to reduce, but he wasn't effective in the reduction. So the Gemara is being medai. Kol hapoiches afilu b'tna. Here he made it nai to reduce the amount of the ksuba, and the mashmoyis of Rav Meir of kol hapoiches is that what he did wasn't effective. But even though it wasn't effective, and be'etem is mechuyev to pay the full ksuba, nevertheless it still be lost to bilatnus. You see from the word of kol hapoiches, instead of just saying a woman who doesn't get the full ksuba, he uses the word kol hapoiches. That's telling us that he tried to do it. He tried to reduce the amount payable to her. He was not effective because he did it using a t'nai and the masna was kotah b'Torah t'nai bottle. Nevertheless, even though she's still going to get the full amount, she's not saying mechta, she's not happy about it, and therefore it's considered vilasi bilasnus. The chivin the amar la, since he just told her you're not going to get it, even though what he said does not have an impact on reality. The chivin amar less lach elamana, since he told her, you know what, I'm not paying you the full ksuba, I'm only paying you half. Loy sam chadaita. She really wasn't happy about going into this marriage. She's not pressured to go into it without making a scene, but she's not really happy about it. And because of that, their mayor considers her bia a bias nus. Correct the Gemara. Mayor, we heard that a mayor hold kol hamasna al mashakot v'torah shenoi bottle. The mayor holds that if you're masna mashakot v'torah, the t'nai is not a good t'nai. Habu d'Rabbanan noi kaim. But if it's only a d'Rabbanan, such as ksuba, his t'nai is kaim. So why did Reb Meir use an expression of kalapoiches, which indicates that he holds that the t'nai is bottle and the husband would be mechuyev to pay the full ksuba anyway? That's not what he holds. Doesn't he hold that by a d'Rabbanan the t'nai would be kaim? So in fact, he wouldn't have to pay her the full amount. Dr. Gemara, no, because Reb Meir ksuba deraisa. Reb Meir holds the chiyuv to give ksuba is midaraisa, and therefore it's considered masna al mashakot v'torah by a deraisa, and it's t'nai is bottle. And even though he made a t'nai that he's only going to pay her partial ksuba, he still is mechuyev to give her the whole ksuba. And even though he is still have to give her the whole ksuba, since she thinks because of what he told her that she's not going to get the whole ksuba, that's enough to make the bilas nuts, because he's putting her into a place of discomfort. She's not happy about what's going on. Dr. Gemara Viter, Tanya, we look at the Brisa. Rameir Aimer, Kol apoichet lebetsula mimosayim, ula almana mimana. Anyone who reduces the prescribed amount of ksuba payment, whether it's Messiah to a Basula, whether it's Mana to an Almana, Harezu Bilas Nus. Rameir holds that's a Bilas Nus because she is not really happy with what's happening. If she's not really happy with what's happening, it's considered by Rameir a Bilas Nus. Rabbi Yosy said the opposite end of the spectrum. He can make a t'nai, and it works, and it's not a bilas nus. He's allowed to modify what the chiyuv ksuba is. Rabbi Yehuda comes up the middle, which is our Rabbi Yehuda, who holds you cannot do it with a t'nai, because like we said, even though it's Rabbanan, Rabbi Yehuda holds that also Rabbanan chizikul devei even Yosy mishal Torah, and the t'nai wouldn't work. But Rotza kosev lebetzula shtar shel Masayim v'koseves lo yitkabalti mim chamana. The way you would be able to do it is you can't undo the chiyuv. The chiyuv is there, but she could write him a receipt that she has already accepted back 50%. So those are the three machlokes. On the one end of the spectrum, Reb Meir holds whether the t'nai works or not is irrelevant. If she merely thinks that you're trying to chep her with her ksuba, it's bilas to bilas. On the other end of the spectrum, you have Rabbi Yosy holds even with a t'nai, he could eliminate the ksuba, and it'll still be a good marriage. And then you have Rabbi Yehuda comes up the middle, that a t'nai wouldn't work, but she could write him a shtar that she received 50%. So, talk to Gemara. Rabbi Yosy Rashai, Rabbi Yosy holds you could just make a t'nai and do away with the ksuba. Or we have a kasha. It says as follows: Ein oitin ksubas isha metaltlin. You're not supposed to. Rashi says in miyachadin metaltlin l'ksuba. You cannot say that these metaltlin, these gold bars, are going to be what's going to pay her ksuba. Why not? Mipnei tikkun ha'olam. And Rashi says because if you say this is your ksuba and then it gets lost, it gets stolen, or whatever it is, it drops in value, it's going to mess her up. So because of that, we could only stick to property. On that, Rabbi Yosy argues, but what he says seems not to argue. So let's see what he said. Rabbi Yosy, the chimat tikkun ha'olam yesh bezu. What tikkun ha'olam is there if you would give metaltlin? V'aloi ein ksuvin u'poichsin. Even if they wouldn't get lost, they still could drop in value. So Rabbi Yosy seems to be repeating the same thing that the Tanna Kama said, that you shouldn't use metaltlin. Correct the Gemara, Tanna, yes?
Sorry, property changes value too.
I know, but for some reason we're not so worried.
I guess in those days it didn't change. It wasn't as drastic as it was these days. But
could be. One of the main reasons why properties didn't change in value so drastically then, like it does now, is because financing wasn't something that was so readily available. Financing and interest rates is what throws values up and down. Well, I ain't Ksubim upaychit. Zaktimor and Tanakama Nami Einoishin Kamar. I don't understand. So the Tanakama said you shouldn't use metalton. The Bjorn said you shouldn't use metalton. What type of machloikas is this? Elalah Hochi Kamar. This must be what's going on here between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi. The Tanakama said that you cannot use metalton. Why? Because we're afraid only that it's going to get lost. But if you could mitigate that problem of the metalton getting lost, in fact, you could use metalton for the ksuba. Where does the Tanakama say you shouldn't use metalton? That's if the husband says this is for your ksuba, and if it gets lost or stolen, it's too bad for you. But what happens if he says, what if he tells you this is dedicated for your ksuba, but if it gets stolen, don't worry, I'm still going to pay you your ksuba. Then Oishin, there the Chachamim do allow the ksuba to be metalton. And on that, that's useless. Sure, it protects you, it mitigates loss due to getting lost or stolen. But the fact is, this commodity might become worth less in value. And once again, her ksuba is not protected. So you see, Rabbi Yossi is so concerned about her ksuba, he won't even allow you to use metaltlin dedicated for ksuba. Why? Because maybe it'll cost her a lot if in the odd chance that the metaltlin drop in value. So let's think about it. Hasta umahotam, the dilma pachli, chayish Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi is so concerned to protect her ksuba that he won't even let her use metaltlin because maybe it will drop in value. Hacha, in our case, the vadika pachta. Here he's actually outright coming and saying, I'm reducing your ksuba. Like Kolshakain, shouldn't Rabbi Yossi surely be makrit? If he's so protective over her ksuba that he won't even let us use metaltlin, and then on the other hand, he could just lop off half of the ksuba just by making it tonight, that's not mistaber. There's a very big difference. Hachi hata. Hatam lo yada the tachel. There she's expecting full ksuba. She wasn't willing to marry him with less than the full ksuba. So she's expecting to be able to get the full ksuba, and if you set aside metaltlin, she's going to be disappointed because she might not get her full ksuba. But hachi yada the kamachla. Here, she could say, I'm walking out. I'm not taking this offer. She accepted the offer. So there, Rabbi Yossi holds the offer works, and in fact, it would be a good marriage. Achse the Rami Bar Chama, the sister of Rami Bar Chama, have an esiva li Rab Avia. She was married to Rab Avia. Let's turn over to top. We want to get a little bit ahead because tomorrow is a very complicated daf. Akiva, we're going to need every chart we can get our hands on for tomorrow. Irches Ksubasa, tomorrow Bez Hashem, I'll be back in person. Irches Ksubasa, she lost her star Ksuba, Rashi says. So Rami Bar Chama's sister, who was married to Rabbi Avia, lost her Ksuba. Also look at Rabbi Yosef. They came in front of Rabbi Yosef. Amalahu, she said, Hachi Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. This is Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel. Zu Diver of Meir. This halacha, that it's a bias nus, if there's no active Ksuba there, she's there of Meir. But we don't pass them like them. You can live with your wife even years without a ksuba.
So what's that? She didn't die, her husband's not dead or divorced, she just realized she was cleaning her closet and the ksuba was gone?
Correct. And the Chum said, we don't say that she's not comfortable living with her husband without a ksuba. She's comfortable, and therefore it wouldn't be a bilas. We don't talk about that, right?
There were Adim that the ksuba was given, weren't there?
Right, so that's why he wasn't worried if she would lose it. That's the story of the Chacham. So Amar le Abaye, the Amar of Nachman Amar Shmuel, Halacha Karav Meir Big Zeraisa. Didn't we say that whenever a mayor makes a gzera, whenever a mayor is a machmer more than the divrei Torah, we pass them like him. So if that's the case, you can't rely on the chachamim who say masha adam es ishtay. If there's no ksuba there, we have to follow a mayor's gzera that they can't stay married. So that's what Abaya told his Rabbi Yosef. So Rabbi Yosef says, okay, so then stop whatever you're doing and quickly go run and write her up a new ksuba, if that's how you feel about it. He also Rav Dimi, Amar Rav Shimon ben Pazi, Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Mishum bar Kapora. Okay, we will stop here. This already gets into a complicated sugya that Mishem we will save for tomorrow.
Yosy,
Yes.
just got a sidebar
Go ahead.
question.
Was that trip?
Go ahead. So thank you very much.
If you can't use metalton, you're saying that not everybody had karka?
Before you left, you told me how to put it on.
What if you don't have karka?
I wrote down the stuff.
I'd
You
like
have
to
buy
answer.
this.
I'd like to answer that. If we're talking in the time of Tanakh,
Yeah.
all the karka went back to their original owners. So that means the price of karka was relatively stable. So when someone's buying something, it's he doesn't get it permanent.
Okay.
So if so-
and
so if someone would-
everyone had like what's what am I?
At Yovel, everybody
Everyone had a
theoretically
piece.
had their property.
So if someone gave his wife money for her ksuba, that she would have the karka until Yovel, and then it would go back to his family.
Okay, I don't know about that, but I'm speaking to the issue of real estate prices going up, only going up and not going down, and that's what Duvi was talking about.
But it makes sense because ksuba she could mon from the lekuchos, meaning even if the husband sold property, she could go take it back. Well, even the person who bought the property would have had to give it back by Yovel. So
Right.
whatever she only takes what the Lekeach had, which means even what land that she took for ksuba would go back by Yovel. So everybody resets everything at Yovel.
That's right.
Ah, interesting one.
Just go.
Shkoich. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
You too. Have a safe drive back.
Thank you.